Hello, my name is Scott Dahl. I'm a master's program director and professor of digital marketing and revenue management at Roches in Cron, Montana. Welcome to Leading Hospitality Through Turbulent Times. This session will be a presentation about 35 minutes with 10 minutes for questions at the end. We're taking questions in writing only, and you can submit these as we go along using the chat function. Just a quick reminder, the session is being recorded and is going to be available on your school's Moodle platform afterwards. It's a personal treat for me to be here with you today, and I think you're about to find out why. My guest, Robert Alter, is a legend in the industry. Mr. Alter is a graduate of Cornell University's Hotel School, a current member of the Dean's Advisory Board. He's the chairman emeritus and founder of Sunstone Hotel Investors. For those of you that haven't heard of it, Sunstone currently owns interest in about 41 hotels operated under brands like Marriott, Hilton, Fairmont, and Hyatt, and has a total enterprise value of over $3.5 billion. Mr. Alter is past president of the Holiday Inn Franchise Association, former member of the Marriott Franchise Board, past president of IHI, which is the association that represents Intercontinental Hotel Group owners with the brand. We're going to dig into all of this, but first, Bob, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Scott. It's an honor to be part of this group.
So, Bob, we've got a bunch of, I'm going to tell you the number here in a second once it settles down, but we've got a bunch of hotel students on with us today, and you went to Cornell. So I'm just wondering, before we get into the current stuff, can you just reflect a little bit on studying and graduating from Cornell?
Well, it was interesting because I was one of those very few high school students that kind of had an understanding of what I wanted to do when I grew up, and I was very fortunate that my uncle ran a summer camp, which I wound up working in the kitchen for many years while I was in high school, both as a head waiter and a steward and those type of things. And as a result, I was very interested in the foods and beverage side of the hospitality industry. And it just so happened my cousin had gone to Michigan State, which was well known at the time. So I, to be a little bit ahead of him, I went to Cornell. I applied to Cornell and went there as a freshman who really didn't know very much. But I enjoyed reaching out. All of my other high school students really didn't know what they were going to be. They said philosophy, and I said, no, I'm going to be very successful financially, and the hotel school is one way to get there. And I went to school, and it was quite interesting because within the first two semesters, I realized the difference between the restaurant side of the business and the hotel side. and restaurants trade for 5 to 7 times EBITDA, at least in the United States. And hotels trade between 10 and 15 times EBITDA. So a dollar created in a restaurant creates $5, and in a hotel creates $10. Well, it didn't take me long to focus my interest in the hotel side of the space and all the courses that I could take in finance and development and those pieces of the learning puzzle that you could take learning to be a hotel owner and developer, which was my goal at the time, and it turned out to be that's what I did.
So, hey, Mike, help me. Tell me, you're getting ready to graduate. We've got a number of students on with us today. They're going to be graduating in the next couple of months. What was on your mind towards the end of your studies there? What were you thinking?
Well, interesting that, I went into turbulent times, not quite as turbulent as today, but back in 1973, that seems so long ago, 1973, there was an oil embargo, and people were lining up, around the corner to get to gas stations, and the hotel business was decimated. So I went in as my year of graduation was a year when it was extraordinarily difficult to get positions. Just so happens I had interned for a couple of years for a company called Quality Inns. They're now called Choice, and they had a company-owned group, and I had interned for them, and they offered me a job, and I wound up getting to be an intern and assistant manager very early with them, and that was the start of my career. I went to over the first 2.5 years, I went to like 11 locations, opened hotels, was their troubleshooter, taught people how to use the front desk and that type of thing. So here I was right out of school and getting a lot of real hands-on experience. One of the things that is interesting for me today, and I taught at Cornell and mentor a lot of students, is a lot of people want to be in the development business or the ownership business, but they don't realize they have to know a little bit about how the hotel operates. And so I think that getting good operational experience for a few years, but not more than a few years, is really good to set the stage if you want to be in hotel development and ownership.
And so you took those positions, right? You gained some experience. It's very interesting to me that you mentioned that about getting some experience and being on the ownership side, because I happen to know a number of finance people that learned the hotel business from you over the course of 10 years that we were, or the 8 years that we were together. But you then got into your own company. You started to you moved in the direction of really realizing your dream of having your own portfolio, and a little bit of that I think is a very exciting story, right? Because it was done. You're done with a lot of creativity, we'll say. But tell us a little bit about when you really started to branch out on your own.
So I had two very strong mentors and partners early in my career. My first partner lived in a little town called Steamboat Springs, and I had been sent there to foreclose on a hotel for a lender, and as part of this company. And then he and I met. His wife ran an accounting company, and he and I met. By the way, Bob today is 92 years old and still a close friend. And he and I did a lot of things together. But he was very, very smart, and he gave me a lot of guidance. And one of the things he said to me is, "You'll never be in business for yourself until you are, because you know, as an employee, you kind of make it up through the ranks, and then you stay an employee. And people have been with companies 30, 40, 50 years in their whole career as an employee. Maybe they got to be promoted, maybe they even ran the company, but they still were not an owner." And so he said, and he had worked, he'd gotten his master's from Northwestern, and he had worked for Ford Motor Company. And he decided to move to Colorado and start his own business, and he started a real estate business. He and I combined and created a real estate management business and started managing condominiums. And those condominiums, I would say, are an early version of Airbnb today. We rented them by the day, by the week, for other owners, and then, but we provided all the services. And it was in a little town called Steamboat. And then ultimately we got the opportunity to buy a few hotels. I bought with him my first hotel when I was 25 years old. And I did that on a side. It was a little hotel on the side of the ski mountain, and it was called the Ptarmigan Inn. And I bought it for $685,000 Okay, that's not the cost, not even the cost of a small house today. It was 29 rooms, and it was located right next to the gondola in Steamboat, and it just was coincidental. It was an opportunity. I had met it through my Chamber of Commerce involvement. I had met another owner. He took me aside one day when I was downtown Steamboat, and he said, "Bob, I have a partner I can't stand. I'm going to let you buy the Ptarmigan Inn." I said, "Glenn, I don't have any money." He says, "You don't need any money because I'm going to finance it. I dislike this partner so much. We bought this hotel over a year ago, but we can't work together." So I said, "I don't understand." So I brought my partner in. The two of us sat down with them. He said, "Will you buy it for $685,000? I'll take $50,000 down, and then we'll do a wrap mortgage over the other mortgages for $635,000." So that's how I got to be an owner in 3 years out of college at 25 years old. And that was the beginning of my ownership interest. Over the course of my career, I've owned about 140 hotels, everything from 29 rooms on the side of a ski slope to 1,179 rooms attached to the convention center in San Diego, the big Hilton there. And everything in between. And when Scott and I worked together, he revenue managed this montage of properties. So originally, I went from that little company that we had, and I wound up with 7 hotels that were partnerships that I put together, where Bob or another partner or other partners wound up with, we all wound up owning the equity in these small little hotels. They were average size of 120 rooms, located in the West, mostly in Colorado. We built some of the first Hampton Inns together with another partner who had been an architect, and he taught me a lot about the build ground up thing, and we built 5 Hampton Inns from the ground up. Those hotels got to be the ownership group that my management company ran with various ownership interests. And then turn the clock forward, and I moved to California, and the industry had gone through a bunch of different cycles, as it always does. There's a cycle of 5 to 7 years, and then something happens. We had 9/11, we had the global financial crisis, we had the oil crisis. There's always something that affects the hotel business. We have something called COVID-19 now. Oh, it's affected the hotel business just slightly. They shut down 90% of the hotels throughout the world. And anyhow, so I had these hotels, and they all had fairly large mortgages on time, and limited partners. And I met an investment banker at a conference I was speaking at, and he said, there's a new thing called a real estate investment trust, which allows you to take your hotels public and create equity, and the public side gets to own them, and you get to manage them, and you can be the CEO of the company, public company. And so I spent a couple of years working with the existing hotels I had, and this investment banker and attorney and some other folks, and we wound up doing an IPO a long time ago and created Sunstone Hotel Investment. We also had another company called Sunstone Hotel Properties, and one was the manager and one was the owner. You want to jump in?
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, so that was the beginning of Sunstone. You took Sunstone public as a REIT. And then just before you and I met, you actually took Sunstone private again, right? I think with some help of some private equity. So right, and there's the Westbrook guys, right? And so so the structure changed, right? And then the structure changed, and then so tell us about that. What I mean, what was the reason for that, and how did that make things different? You know, to get out of the public environment into private equity.
Well, what I said earlier, which is really true, the business, the hotel business, does go through incredible cycles, and every time you think things are going great, there's something that's going to change. In 1997, our REIT had grown from 7 little hotels to 60 hotels, from a market cap of a total of $50 million to $1 billion worth of hotels. And the stock had gone from $9.50 to $17. Along the way, we used our stock to buy other companies, to buy other hotels. And we had run this thing for 5 years of real solid growth. Wall Street loved us. And then there was something called the Russian financial crisis. It's like a pin on the map now. Nobody remembers it, but our stock went from $17 to $6 in about 2 months. And all of a sudden, things that didn't matter before mattered. So we were about 8 times levered, and that became an issue for the investors because the investors wanted less risk. So one of the things that I had done with that stock when it was moving fast, so we bought a company called Keller Hotel Company from this firm called Westbrook Investors. We purchased the company and we made them take $50 million, size of the entire company, started $50 million of stock, and they got the stock at $14. And then the stock went to $16, $17, even hit $18. And then the stock went to $6. Now they had 2 seats on the board and they owned about 10% of the company. So I got a call from the founder of that company, and he said, "Bob, we liked you at 14. We loved you at 17. At $6, not so much. You have to either do something. So we're either going to sell the company or take it private." Now, in the old structure, they own 10%, and I had 90% public investors. And I had a board, and they were just 2 seats of 9 people. So they really didn't control the deal. So we had to form a special committee, and we had, in fact, took a process, and we actually had another bidder along the way. But the ultimate deal came down where the management team and Westbrook bought the company for $10.35. And we bought the company with a structure where Westbrook was 95% with their real estate opportunity fund, and Sunstone management team was 5%. And we took out all the public investors. One of the part of the transactions was we took the management company and operating company, Sunstone Hotel Properties, and we, the management group, put that in to the new deal. So the new deal, which was a private enterprise went on, was owned and operated. So we didn't have 2 separate companies where we had an owner and an operator. Then we did that for 5 years. And during the time, we bought hotels, sold hotels, and created value. Our mantra as a company was always buy hotels that were broken and either fix them through renovation, repositioning, or rebranding. And we did a lot of independent hotels to Holiday Inns, to Marriott, and to Hilton. And that success of changing that created a platform, which 5 years later, when Westbrook decided they should exit, we went to the marketplace and decided that would be a great opportunity to sell the company again to the public and create a second public company.
So Bob, just to clarify, when you said you sold the company for $10.35, for everyone that's maybe not so versed in that, that's $10.35 per share, not $10.35. So
Right.
little clarification on that for those of you that don't speak the finance shorthand.
We had 60 million shares outstanding.
Oh wow, okay. So yeah, about 600 million market cap. And when the company was held by Westbrook is when you and I met, and when I joined you, and really an amazing time for me as a revenue manager, because as you mentioned, we were buying hotels that weren't great hotels and we were investing in them. And so how much fun is it for a person like me in my position to get new product and compare myself to Star Reports when it was the old product and have just great growth. I mean, it was really a fun time to run hotels. And that you mentioned that piece about Westbrook owning 95%. And I think that other 5% is really, really important, because you have always, in my opinion, been a leader who has kind of brought people in and sort of given them skin in the game, is a term that I think I hear you say a lot, and really motivate us to really grab on and do our roles and act like owners and think entrepreneurially. So it was a really cool time when that happened. And then the company went public. We took the company public again, and there's some stuff with REITs not operating their hotels, so you had to unbundle the management company from the real estate, right? And so what happened? How did that? What did you end up doing there?
Yeah, so one of the technicalities were we looked at taking the company public as a standard company, and then we looked at it taking it public as a REIT. Theoretically, REITs were created in the United States as a way for individual investors to own institutional real estate. I think with the tax law changes and everything else, it really doesn't apply the same way as it used to, but it has certainly evolved. And in order to take the company public as a REIT, we took the company and split it back into the operating company and the ownership company. And then we took the operating company and sold it to a bigger hotel company called Interstate Hotel Investors. And we required that company to keep our management team in place and as a silo. And then the REIT went off and became a public company. And as part of that public company, we bought bigger hotels. What Wall Street wanted was more institutional real estate. And so where our average hotel size was like 175 rooms, it went to 275 rooms and then 300 rooms. I think if you take the Sunstone today, they probably have hotels with an average of 400 rooms. And so the Wall Street mentality was more urban, more major markets, and more institutional. And effectively, if you're a public company, guess what you do what the investors want? The investors effectively run your company, the Wall Street investors, and they tell you what you should be doing. Like they know much better than you do. And that really is the story of what has occurred in the REIT industry. I stayed on, and then I stayed on as CEO for 3 years, and then became executive chairman for another 5 of that company, and exited in my own personal portfolio. So you wanted to talk a little bit about the technology. technology
Yeah,
side.
I want to actually ask you one more question, really about the third-party management kind of situation, right? We when we were together at Sunstone, we managed hotels that allowed us to manage them, and when you evolved into a more institutional situation, you get into those bigger boxes, so to speak. There's not as much opportunity to manage those as a franchise. Many times they're tied up with the brand management and that sort of thing. And so, was there? I mean, you mentioned that Wall Street was driving the bus. Do you have is there a version of those that you would think is a better, from your perspective as an operator and an investor that's aware of the operation, is one of those better than the other as far as a company structure, do you think?
Well, I think the issue of brand managed versus ownership managed will really come through in the next couple of years. Um, the big hotels in big cities are pretty much operated by the brands. So, and I think for your students, they must, they should realize there's three separate pieces of a hotel. There's the hotel itself, that somebody owns that. And then there's the brand, and in cases in the US, 80% of the hotels are brand. In Europe, I think 20% of the hotels are branded. I think you'll see much more branded hotels in Europe over the next 5 years. But I and then somebody manages it, and those three entities can be separate or they can be the same. I think for many years in Europe, Holiday Inns, Hilton, and Marriott were only branded and managed their hotels. They didn't have franchisees. That has evolved over the last 20 years. And I think over the next 20 years, it will evolve more. I think you'll see less and less brand managed hotels and more franchisee or ownership managed hotels as it works its way through.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we're already seeing really a shift with the big brands more into service providers than actual operators of hotels, right? They provide specific, brand level services like distribution and those kind of things, and brand marketing and stuff. So while we were together at Sunstone, we were working together during the last, what I would consider, downturn that in any way gets close to this one, and that was after September 11th, when business travel came to a halt. And the short time period after that, really kind of, if you remember, it was all of a sudden we were getting rooms from a new source, from this crazy internet thing, and we started to try and figure that whole piece out. And then we started to understand a little bit more. At first, we thought it was new business. We were really excited, but then we started to understand more. It was really our own customers being sold back to us. And you got very involved with a couple of big ownership groups in really advocating and championing what ultimately became rate parity in the online travel agency world. And I was wondering, could you tell us a little bit about that? What was it like to collaborate across those companies to make a change like that in the business? And looking back at it now, what do you think of rate parity in hindsight? I mean, we had something to do with making it happen. And what do you think of it now? Because it's kind of starting to get attacked a little bit in a lot of ways. So,
well, when you talk about rate parity, I think there's a couple of sides of that rate parity. First of all, what online people, Expedia, hotels.com, booking.com, and those type of people were running ads saying you can get a better price if you go to them versus going to the hotel direct, going to any other, the travel agent or anybody. And we wanted to extinguish that myth. And what we did was we got the brands to accept the best rate guarantee. So at each brand, Holiday, Marriott, Hilton, they all accepted that they would honor and say, at this hotel, the best rate to get is if you book direct or with the system, as opposed to a third party. And so for many years, there was quote parity. And so the same rate you could get at the hotel was the same rate you could get at all the online travel agencies, which the online travel agency if you add the value of those companies up, pre-COVID, those companies were worth more than the hotel companies because the Wall Street investors thought they had great growth. So they would run ads and spend lots of money on advertising saying, you can get a better price if you go here to Expedia than if you go to Hilton.com. So we had to break that myth with the rate guarantee. That was our first thing. That was probably 20 years ago, where we convinced the brands to accept the best rate guarantee. Since that time, we've been involved in breaking the best rate guarantee in a different way, where if you're a member of Hilton Honors or Marriott Rewards Bonvoy now, or in IHG's owners points system, I forget what it's called. You can get what?
A priority club still, I think.
Yeah, priority club. You can actually get a discount against that rate that's in the market. So if a hotel is in the market at $100 everywhere, including at the brand site, but if you're a Hilton Honors member or Bonvoy member, you can buy that room for $95. And that has kind of shifted back to the importance of loyalty. And loyalty is one of those things that is really the brand's biggest value today, is the loyalty points along with the service levels. Going forward through COVID-19, one of the things that the brands will clearly have an advantage of is putting peace of mind in the minds of these frightened travelers that your room is going to be super clean. And that might not be true at the ABC motel or hotel. That might not be true at the Airbnb, but at the Hilton or the Marriott or the Intercontinental, you're going to get, or the Hyatt, I think, they all have come out with super clean standards for cleanliness guaranteed, and that will be the next great thing that the brands will promote.
So let's roll it forward a little bit. So I think that's, most of us are aware of the member rate situation. Expedia and Booking.com have their own member rates. Everyone's decided to hide their rates behind that fence and basically make consumers fill their wallets with those cards again, that for a while we didn't have them all, and now we're back to having them all. But roll it forward a little bit. You're still very involved in that. The new buzzword a lot in distribution, at least, is net RevPAR. And you sit on the board of a company called Calibri Labs that's founded by Cindy Estes Green. For those of you that know a little bit about distribution, that's a big name in hospitality distribution. And she started a company really that's, I think, very involved in really an educational effort to help hoteliers understand, the true impact of distribution cost, because it's spread all over our P&Ls otherwise, right? So tell us a little bit, how did you get involved with Calibri and what's that all about?
Well, first of all, I think the concept that Cindy promotes, which is called net RevPAR, really goes to all of these OTAs and the various ways they sell net rates, they sell gross rates, there's travel agent costs, there's direct booking costs of when you actually have salespeople. And her formula and her program lets a hotel see the net RevPAR that you get versus the gross RevPAR. Because if you look at the hotel and look at the bottom line, it's the net RevPAR that makes the money, and you got to take the money to the bank. You can't just live on occupancy and rate. And so I've known Cindy for many years. Her and I and some other people, we sponsored a study that she did for the American Hotel Association. And then ultimately she turned it into a company, and with me and some other people started the company. And for you students there, it is small world. her partner was my freshman roommate at college, and he's the CFO. And it's a small world. Be nice to everybody on the way up, because you're going to see them on the way down too.
Including your roommates, for those of you that are out there right now. It's a great one.
So,
that's a great one.
So it's very interesting. She's built the company up, and she has gotten all the brands to give her checkout data. So she, through her database, knows what the costs are, and what the revenues are, and what the net RevPAR is. And she provides different reports for lots of different companies. So it's a startup. It's going to be very successful. I expect that ultimately, I hope ultimately, it replaces the Smith Travel that we have in the United States, that has the database on all the hotels. Unlike Smith Travel, where they tell you about group, transient, and contract, this gives you 27 different sources of business, so you can analyze your information and help you, or help somebody like a Scott, do the revenue management, so that you understand how many of these gates you should open and close when you're running your hotel.
And before we move on, I just want to, those of you that have had me for revenue management, especially, this is not going to be a new thing to you, but I want to promote a specific article, and it's really a white paper that gets updated quarterly, and that's by Cindy Estes-Green, and I'll actually provide a link to it so we can post it on the Moodle pages. But she produces and updates a very interesting document called Demystifying Distribution. And I would absolutely recommend it to anyone that's curious about this space. It really does a very good job of explaining all of the different components in a very transparent way, and something that, quite frankly, is pretty convoluted otherwise. So that's really cool. I didn't know, Bob, until we talked the other night, that you were on the board with Cindy. But I've used Cindy in some of my classes. Cindy's amazing. I think she's an amazing person.
Yeah.
That's not your only tech thing, though. A lot of your hotels, your new venture. We'll talk about your new venture as we wrap up. But you've got you're implementing some operations tech as well. And so what I'd like to do, I'm going to share a little piece of a video of something that you've got going on in your hotels, and let you speak over the top of it. And then again, for those of you that are out there watching, the entire video will be posted on Moodle, so you'll be able to see the whole thing with the sound and stuff. It's very interesting. But let me just share a little piece of it with you. So hold on just a moment. And then, Bob, if you wouldn't mind, give us some professional narration on top of it. That would be great.
Okay.
So here we go. Okay, I think you guys can see that now. So here we go.
Yeah. So back a few years, as I said, I left being.
It's very interesting. What's it doing? There we go. Okay, now it's calmed down. There we go. Sorry about that.
So back in when I left Sunstone as chairman in 12, one of the things I wound up doing was having hotels at LAX. And so there was an empty office building next to one of my hotels that I was able to buy at a great price. And I turned it into a 231 room Residence Inn. And I had seen at a trade show this robot called Sabioki. And these robots, you program to have the map of the hotel. They sit at the front desk, and when they call the elevator electronically, and then they go and find the room. You see there's the little station where it sits. And so a guest calls down and asks to have Starbucks delivered or towels delivered, and the front desk clerk programs the robot, take this to room 804 and puts the towels in, or puts the Starbucks in, and then the robot opens the elevator, goes up to its room, rings the phone, and then the guest comes to the door, and it pops open its lid. In the lid is this. Now you say, what's the benefit of having a robot do this? Well, in LA, we pay, including benefits, about $25 an hour for labor. We lease this computer for about $2 an hour. And so the more we can get the robot to do, the less you don't have to have a person to do that. So for example, I'm by myself as night auditor at 11 o'clock at night, and somebody says I need 2 towels, and I might not have somebody else there to send up the 2 towels. I send it up by the robot. The robot's standing there, goes up there and opens and delivers the towels. So you have guest satisfaction, you have a mechanized thing, and it's kind of a neat thing. If we can get this robot to also vacuum the hallways while we go, we're really going to be on top of it.
put a Roomba underneath him. That's a great idea. I worked some night audit, and I worked night audit at a hotel where I was by myself. And I would love to have a robot like that, because instead of that, I had a sign that said, "I'll be right back." I used to put it on the front desk and drop my towels off and then come back in a couple minutes. So you mentioned the conversion of the office building at LAX. One of the things that I've always known about you and always really admired is how opportunistic you are. Different things that you did with co-branding of hotels in same locations way before people were doing that. We were, in my opinion, one of the first companies to cluster revenue management and attack that function with fewer, smarter people. And so now your current venture, Seaview Hospitality, smaller, but very, very interesting. And I wanted to actually share a little bit about, there's another hotel that's in that portfolio, very similar converted use, the residence in Beverly Hills, but it was a hospital that after a big earthquake, it was no longer seismically okay to be a hospital. And so you bought this hospital and turned it into a hotel, including putting the pool in the morgue, if you remember. I mean, it was really cool. But I think tell us a little about Seaview now, because I think Seaview seems like it's the culmination of your expertise. It also seems like you're having a little more fun. So tell us about that.
It's back to the beginning. You see the thing where you go around a complete circle. So it's kind of the circle of ownership. And these hotels, there's 7 hotels in Seaview Investors, which is a very small company, and it's really back to worrying about individual hotels for the investors with a very small team that maximizes the assets in really very strong markets. So it happens to have 4 hotels at LAX, a couple up in Beverly Hills, and one up in Sonoma Wine Country, which is just north of San Francisco. And it's less about growing the company than it is about getting great returns for the investors. And myself I'm one of the largest investors in each hotel, and that gives us an opportunity. When I quote retired, I decided that it would be too boring to sit at home and play golf. So my project is taking opportunities and finding them and turning them into very profitable ventures.
Beautiful. And just really hotels, I think in some cases that others, you seem to have kind of a little bit better vision, I think sometimes, Bob, for seeing those things, because there were some of them that we did. There were hotels we bought when I worked for you that I scratched my head. And then 3 months later had to say, well, obviously I don't understand yet, because they were good buys. And I learned a lot from the time we were there together. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to ask you for a word of wisdom at the end, but I've got a couple questions. Let's take a couple questions and then we'll finish up. The first one is a really interesting question, right? You have a lot of experience. You've been through some things. 9/11, the Great Recession. I'm not sure we were alive for that one. But what do you think is the biggest threat to hospitality, and what do you think hoteliers should invest? Where do you think they should invest to overcome it?
Well, remember, hospitality is all about people treating other people hospitably. And I think that might be Hilton's line. But I think the challenge for us in the industry is continuing to find good people that can provide that special touch for people and make them feel that they're at home. And one of the things that is challenging is as the structure of the company, of the industry becomes more institutional, you lose some of that personal touch. And in Switzerland, I've been to some wonderful hotels where you meet the owner who's standing in the lobby. And those days are behind us more than ever before. So we really, as an industry, need to continue to have super interested people to take the role of creating the hospitality. I'm actually going to be on a Zoom call in a couple of hours with the CEO of Hilton, with a group of other owners, and he truly embodies the aspect of keeping it personal, and I think that's the big challenge for us going forward in the industry.
So, Bob, I'm having a little struggle with my camera, but hopefully you guys can still hear me. I've got a couple more questions. The next one is actually a really good question, and I really love this question, actually. So the person prefaces it by saying it might be a little bit simple, but what qualities and traits should a successful leader have?
Well, when you're a leader, you get people to follow you. I think being transparent and honest and being somebody they can respect creates leadership. I call it the no jerk rule. And nobody wants to work with somebody who's a jerk. And so I don't know how that translates, but jerk in the American language.
I think it's pretty universal, actually. I think you're fine.
Yeah. So you gotta treat people the way you want to be treated, and you have to be somebody they look up to. And so, they create your own image, and don't be afraid to be real and treat people the way that you want to be treated. I think that's the secret to leadership.
I mean, I can vouch for that. I think I always enjoyed working for you. And one of the things I enjoyed working for you is it seemed like the few minutes that we would spend together, you cared. You would ask me a question, you'd wait for listen to the answer. Every once in a while you'd send me an email, hey, this is going on this weekend, I can't go. Do you want to use these tickets? And they weren't 2 tickets to the opera because that's not my thing. They were 2 tickets to the Lakers because that is my thing. So I really think that you're right. I think that when you when you tune into people, I think they will perform for you at their best, and I can vouch for that in your case. So no question about it. I'm going to ask you one other finance question, and then we'll kind of wrap it up. But there's a lot of pressure on the industry right now. This is a very good question. Rates are going up and down, uncertainty in the market, and so on. What do you think's up with are you a net buyer or a net seller of hotels in the next couple years?
I think it's going to be a real wait and see. I think nobody knows whether this economy is going to come roaring back or is going to become a slow grow back like we did, from 8 to 16. It's going to be a hard time. And for my money, my hands are in my pockets, and I'm watching and seeing. And I believe that 18 months from now or 2 years from now, there may be some great opportunities, but it really depends on what happens. I think Europe is going to be really challenging. My wife and I spend a lot of time in Italy, and I think Italy was one of the first economies to close down. And I think it will take a long time till this comes back to the point where it was in 2019. So I'm a sit on the sidelines for now.
Okay. I think that's a great answer. I'm still struggling to see if I can get my camera to work here for the end, but okay. So,
We see your picture.
oh, you do? Okay. I just don't see
Well,
it
it
then.
was just. a
Oh, you
picture.
see my my static picture. Okay.
Yeah.
Might come back here in a second. Let's see what happens. No, it's very interesting. Okay. So really, Bob, thanks so much. Amazing.
Now you're back.
Oh, here we go. Okay. So amazing. I mean, really, exactly the wisdom that I hoped you'd be able to share, to be honest with you. It's really been, it's been fantastic. It's been fun catching up with you, to be honest with you. Let me just give you an opportunity. You've got a whole bunch of people right now. I think there's probably a relatively decent percentage of them that are looking at you and saying, you know what, if I could end up where he is by the time I get done, this will have all paid off. What words of wisdom do you have for him?
Well, my most important thing to tell everybody is be open to possibilities. You don't know when the opportunity is going to be around and around that corner, and you just don't know. So don't be set in your ways and your mind. Be open to possibilities. The other thing I would tell everybody is your reputation is your single biggest asset. And people go around, it's the hotel business, the restaurant business, the hospitality business is a small business. And people tend to know everybody or know somebody who knows somebody else. And so your reputation as fair, honest, and hardworking is something that everybody appreciates. And if you're not, they'll know.
Yeah, I mean, this is a business. I think you're right. This is a business that everybody in the building likes to see the GM roll up his sleeves once in a while. And I think that really drives a lot of credibility. And I think as a leader, it's one of those industries where if we ever let it out that we're not willing to do the job that the people that work for us do, we're probably dead, right? It's just one of those things that you're right. It takes a lot of respect to be successful. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for you. I think I enjoyed the time we had, the time we worked together, and still definitely one of my most educational time periods in the business. For sure, and the things that we did. So we've got that's pretty much it for the questions. That kind of gets us to the end of our time. But Mr. Alter, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for getting up early on the west coast of California and joining us. And I know based on the questions, there was a tremendous amount of engagement. So thanks. Thank you so much. It was really fantastic. And for those of you that are joining us, I hope you enjoy the rest of the series. We've got some really great sessions coming up next week. And so keep an eye on your updates, keep an eye on your emails, and we'll see you guys all soon.